What's up, everybody? We are back with the DMINTI Mocha podcast. Our guest today, collector, curator, Terrence. Terrence, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, real pleasure. Let's start at the beginning, man. Please just let us, everybody, know about yourself and how you ended up to be here.
I'm like crypto guy first and foremost, and started like jumping into like the NFT art stuff about like a year and a half ago. Got into like a lot of Bitcoin, a couple other smaller like little artists in Brooklyn. Working close with a couple guys on launching a couple artists, some representation stuff, EDG. Kind of all over, but basically just enjoying the art.
Super. So let's run it linear, man. I'd love to know what excited you about crypto in the first place.
So I was started out in equities, and kind of just bad taste in my mouth for the whole TradFi thing. Spent a little bit of time in school, wasn't really like doing it for me. It wasn't really just didn't have the passion for it, to be honest. And there was like a lot more to build and be done inside crypto. So yeah, kind of just followed the interests and took me into DeFi, and then from DeFi didn't really want to hold on to a lot of dollars, which I'm not enjoying right now that much, but ended up taking a lot of money into art. That was kind of like my whole thing. Like as I was working, trading, building whatever, it was cashing into NFTs and some other art.
I think our stories are probably similar. Mine was, investment banking, wealth management, into crypto. And then from crypto into the arts. Were you involved at all 2017 ICO days or
not like closely? I was buying coins for illicit activities back in high school, but I was not was not really taking full advantage of it back then.
Yeah, so there's almost a meme now that this recent boom was 2017 ICOs with pictures, shitcoins with picture. What is it that perhaps you think separates a a shitcoin with a picture from an artwork?
Yeah, I think a lot of it kind of boils down to like edition sizes. That's like my personal opinion on it. I think it's super easy to tell like when good art kind of becomes marketing rather more than anything else. I think that edition sizes, profile pictures. I think that there's definitely like a lane for that, and there's definitely like that market's obviously there. But I don't think the longevity's there in like the art or anything else that's got crazy additions and just like open-ended type stuff. I do enjoy some of it, but I try to stay away.
So you focus more one of one or low editions?
Yeah, one-on-one season is yet to come, right? But
one day.
One day. Yeah, but I do try and stay away from the editions. I think that there's a lot of fun in like building community around things like that. But I think that the future of like the art and all this stuff and the NFT is more in just like the provenance and being able to have, for me personally, it's just like the ease of sale, right? Like I have a nice piece of art and now I got the NFT with it and I can move it much easier than I could if I did not, right? So
yeah, so I mean, let's ground that. I mean, I think Bitcoin is a wonderful example of one of one with many pieces that fit into a general collection. I think Sarah is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, such an innovator, and the project itself is just like very conceptually rigorous and interesting. Anything in particular that attracted you to that work?
Yeah, so Bitcoin, I first fell into just like about a year and a half ago. Kind of was one of like the first NFTs I was checking out, just because like the provenance, right? So I was like digging around for a long time and like stumbled across Bitcoin. I actually think I fell across it through Fingerprints DAO, and I picked up a couple Bitcoin, and then had met Sarah through a fingerprints type meetup luncheon. And yeah, really like started to like understand more of the project. I didn't really understand the depth of Bitcoin until I really like I'd already been buying them, and then I, started digging. And I was like, oh, there's a lot more to this than, meets the eye. And yeah, I think that all the Bitcoin stuff is really great. I think that it kind of gets glanced over a lot. Like for some reason, I think in a lot of the like you see the timelines of the NFT stuff, right? And for some reason,
Yeah.
Bitcoin, I think a lot of times I found it gets like left out for some reason.
Well, yeah, generally the people who put those together have, their own interest at heart.
Yeah, totally. And I think that also there's a big like difference in the collectors behind Bitcoin than there is like other NFT projects, especially like, big, like we're saying, not necessarily edition sizes, but large supply projects. Yeah, there's definitely more of like a fine art background there. And it definitely shows like in the Bitcoin market and how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, look, during like the mania, I think people were just moving whatever was hot, so all these purported NFT archaeologists would pop up, they jump on a Twitter space, they, had already accumulated massive supply, and then they would just like dump into that fervor.
Totally.
It actually takes some pretty like, it takes hours to, again, like dive into projects with intent, dive into projects with depth, understand the collector base, understand the artist statement. And I think Sarah has just done a really wonderful job of fostering a community. So I think, just applause to collectors like you who have the time, take the time, and are looking for something deeper.
Thank you. Yeah, totally. And I think it's kind of like I think that's getting better. I think as like more curation gets into the space, there's definitely like now a more interested, personally invested sense, I think, in a lot of the NFT space right now. I think people are kind of trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm buying or I was buying? But yeah, I think totally. I think that the collectors there are super great. I think they've done a great job, nurturing that community. And it's like definitely shows, like we're saying in the market, right? Like Bitcoin, when things were really hot, we're hanging out maybe like 50% of where they were at now. And yeah, it's cool to watch things like reprice in dollars, like a lot of good art. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's interesting to see.
I mean, in this, this bear market, there has been consolidation around incredible projects, which is really nice. You see the bottom fall out of a lot of hype, and you've seen projects consolidating. There really hasn't been there's been a slowdown in broad activity, but the pieces that were desirable have not gone down in price.
Yeah, no, a lot of them actually, like I feel like have went up. Like yeah, a lot of them have definitely went up. And I think that right now is like also like it's a great time because when things do reprice a little bit, right, you start to establish this new collector base with like a much more reasonable footing that kind of, lets people, it's easy to like hold on to something and host conviction if you're doing well, right?
Yeah.
So giving like opportunity to new collectors that want to dive in and like get to see this like curational side of the space right now, definitely having like gonna end up with the biggest benefit.
Yeah, facts. What do you think people in there, do you think this is a market geared to a obviously traditional art collector, average age 65? This is feeling very much like a market geared to people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think that it's pretty funny because like I've definitely seen like more like the fine art side of things in the last few months, and I think that it's funny like being the youngest guy in the room, and art's like the whole art game itself is like pretty exclusive, pretty exclusive little community to break into, at least the fine art world. So it's pretty weird like experiencing that flip side of like everyone's 50, 60, 70 years old, kind of like who the hell are you? And then you go into this NFT scene and honestly like 22, 25, 30, you're almost like it's backwards, right? You're feeling like older.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's funny because I was just down at like Christie's Art Plus Tech Summit, and there's still like a major divide between people who represent traditional galleries, museums. They're very obviously interested in learning, but at like dinner conversations and sitting down, it's pretty difficult to like find common ground.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I'm curious, what about, you know, this art, this new movement, you think makes it attractive to individuals like ourselves?
Well, I think for me personally, and I'm sure for you also, like I really just like seeing the good art getting a chance to like totally be in control of its own distribution, right? Like that's
Yeah,
plain and
yeah,
simple the best thing about NFTs, right? Artists can't control their distribution. Once it leaves your hands, you don't see it. You know, it's just nice. Like it's just literally good tech for good art. That whole flip side of, you know, how do you get galleries and gallerists to understand things the same way, outside of, you know, I feel like a lot of it kind of misses out on, you know, we can do something new here with these galleries, and a lot of it is trying to actually just adapt the old model with the new technology.
mm,
um, yeah, and I think that it's definitely hard to like bridge that divide and, you know, kind of find common ground. But I think the common ground is the good art, right? I think at the end of the day, that's what the galleries are there for, as much as, you know, guys like you and I. And I think if we can start to figure out how can we, you know, enable these galleries to kind of flip the model of doing well for the gallery and more if you're doing well for the artist, instead of, you know, the galleries are a business, right? End of the day.
totally.
And if you can, you know, turn that business into something that proves a little more benefit for the artist instead of just the gallery, definitely is like the opportunity place to do it.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. I'm not like one of these like cut out all middlemen maxis, you know? Like I want to be
Totally.
having these conversations because I think good art needs good storytelling, and it needs advocates to like begin to teach people, you know, what it is, what it's about. Um, and I don't know what that disconnect is. Perhaps it's fearful. It feels like a threat. Perhaps it feels, you know, a bit of like, you know, built on sand. I think us as like a younger generation of collectors continue to have to prove it. I think a lot of people were on the sidelines, just like waiting and seeing what this was. It was incredibly manic. It feels like it's starting to sober up, and you know, I think a lot of the discussions I was having was around canon. What is canon in this space? And frankly, I think it's just like too early to begin to decide or even assess what is canon.
Yeah. I think that right now, like at least what I'm trying to do is focus on the good art that's, you know, using the tech like the way that it should be, right? So for the distribution, not for just open editions and monetizing your art, more for, you know, actually just enabling the sale of your art rather than letting this become, you know, art is a business. And yeah, you totally need the galleries to spin that narrative, right? I think the narrative is super important. Just when I did a show with Def Beef, Godman, EDG, JPEG Space at the Boiler, and I think that I've seen like almost like directly the impact of explaining that narrative in real life to transitioning to, you know, the value change in the market. I think that once you can explain the art, and if you can do it in a really concise way, you need someone like galleries to do that, or like it's almost like activism investing, right? Being a great
Yeah.
collector, you need to be like adding that value for your artists as much as, you know, they're bringing back that value to you with good art. And you definitely need galleries to do that for sure.
I mean, I was just on with EDG, and I can't begin to tell you, you should listen to the conversation because he was really singing your praises, man. He's like, this is work that needs to be shown in large scale format. And, you
Yeah.
know, tell people about how you showed the work.
Yeah. So I totally big believer, big agreement with Eric on the whole, you know, large scale format art. I think that the whole idea behind our show is that people are all staring at this stuff on their 18-inch computer screens, right? And when you're not, it's going on to something like a token frame, or it's going on to like a giant Samsung frame. If you,
Yeah.
you know, trying to display your stuff at home, it's staying in that, you know, very flat presentation where it's hard to actually like immerse yourself in a lot of this stuff. And a lot of this generative stuff is like a lot of layers and depth and detail that, you don't really get to see on that little, screen. You don't get to really experience it the same full effect. So we did a show using projectors in a super small, boiler in Brooklyn, giant super industrial space warehouse. And we did giant projections, like 500, 600-inch projections of spectral beings, phantoms. And so I saw also Samsung did something with Mazenau on a giant screen. And I think those are like great examples where you can really see that like the art, people will see it on the computer screen and they'll see it on token frame. They'll say, oh, that's really cool. But they'll see the same piece, projected huge, taller than them. And then, that's like, oh, what is that? Don't notice it. Didn't notice it before. It definitely like has like a really real impact in how you present the art. I think that's the same in all art though, not just digital things.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the way that we're experimenting in displaying it is a reflection of the values that the community holds, right? So instead of like more backroom dealings or kind of sterile white wall galleries, like you did it in an industrial space in Brooklyn, like I bought a church, right? And I'm showing stuff here at
That's
the
awesome.
church. Yeah.
I saw also the Argentinian guys, Frenetic. They had an awesome installation, also super industrial, right?
They were in like, it was dope. They were on like this 4th floor in Chinatown. Like past the like bus line, and then like up it just smelled like cigarette smokes, and it was just like amazing. And I actually have that whole exhibit installed here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right now. So it's like concrete blocks, and it's beautiful. I mean, I might be like #1 crypto Argentina fan.
Yeah, same. Yeah, when I met Frenetic, and I was definitely Argentina pilled, but the whole display you guys had going with the concrete blocks and the wiring and the framing, super cool, super cool. I think you need more of that.
I had never seen like also infinite objects displayed so well and interesting, like hung from the ceiling, next to each other. Yeah, that was
super cool. Yeah, I totally think that like that's something I'm really excited to like see evolve, like the presentation of the work. I just saw yesterday at Top of the Rock, Sarah's speculations are up there, and Dawn Chorus, the piano. And I thought like one of the craziest presentations of some, like at least an NFT I had seen. And these are things where you see them and you don't recognize right away it's an NFT, right? Like you can see things and say, okay, it might be digital art, might not be an NFT. And I think I personally really like seeing things like that, where like people kind of see it and they're like, oh, this is crazy art, right? And it's crazy presentation. And then later it's like, oh, and it's an NFT. Like, I think that's definitely the way to be doing like these type of things, right? Like have the art be the focus and at least have this tech there.
The beauty of it, of course, is that it travels. Like, unlike the physical, it travels. Like, I remember very early on, we were showing Dmitry Cherniak's Breath of Fresh Pearls. We're showing it to people at this dinner on a print. Like, we had it in VR in the museum, large format, and it was in Tokyo, right? On like one of the billboards there. So, obviously digital is scalable, and the ability to like show and access and kind of like hack into different spaces, screens, I find just very compelling and interesting.
Yeah, logistically, it's awesome, right? Like we're saying before, even if you don't like the NFT, right? If you're a collector and you have the NFT, it's great for the sale, right? Great for the sale, great for the presentation. I think there's ways. I think that there's like not ways, but there's definitely a ways to go before like things are kind of sorted out. I feel like with like the hosting digitals, because it's funky, right? Like loaning out crazy one-of-ones to a museum today, right? Like fine art. It's a business in itself, right? And it's really hard. That I think is a hard thing to translate, scaling like the monetization of a collection, right? Especially if it's so distributable.
And I know that's kind of like a major point that the marketplaces are working on. Like sub-licensing. I mean, we just ran forward without any sort of like IP agreements or licensing agreements.
I think that's how everything's been like so far for almost everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, like, back to the point, it's just like the spaces that we're choosing to inhabit and display and really speak to this idea of a broader community, as opposed to, I don't, know how true it is, but like maybe like the smaller dinner parties of the traditional art collector, where they would like show a new piece and talk about it within the setting of their home. Just like the fluidity with which our generation exists, less stability, more travel.
Yeah, it's like we're saying, like the fine art world's super exclusive, right? And
Yeah.
this is big part of this is the inclusivity, right? Not just for collectors, but for the artists to be able to, be included in the control of their own art and where it goes and who sees it. And I think that right now, I don't think it's the time to be trying to monetize the collections. I'm excited to see, how it comes down the road with like licensing. But I think that right now, right, it's almost like an onboarding in a sense, right? Like getting people in the door saying this is awesome, get the NFTs in every gallery, museum, distribute them. But yeah, in the future, it'll be a cool thing to see play out, I think. For sure.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were building kind of a specific curation project. Do you want to talk about that at all?
So it's actually it's not so much a curation project. It's almost like a incubator for artists. So basically kind of it's putting a couple artists together. Everyone's, getting their salaries. So that kind of the idea is enable artists do their best work when they don't have to worry about anything hanging over their heads, right? I think that's true in all senses. You have a salary, you have some security at the end of the day, you're going to do great work. And I think in a lot of the artists that I've worked with, need that like kind of help and like controlling, not just like figuring out how to navigate, all these marketplaces and, these collectors and, talks and and all this stuff. I think they need help, almost like a self-esteem thing, like building up with like people around them and kind of understanding like, your work is there. You do great work. You just need to figure out your distribution. Like you need to find your channel, you need to find, your collector base to sell to and really just sing that same song for a long time. So what we're doing is just kind of putting a bunch of artists together, giving them some salaries and having them do art, and some art comes back to the group. Everyone does well together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I heard that again in 2021. It's just like surprise to nobody, but some of the best artists are introverts. They're
Totally.
like, they do it themselves. They express their creativity, and to be in such like a hype fueled FOMO based scene was both a major distraction, I think, and also for them very challenging for things like self-esteem, because I think they know the work is good, but it's not selling. So again, when we start to like think about intermediaries or middlemen, people that can offload like marketing burden, distribution burden, for very talented creatives so that they can do what they do best. Like this is necessary and critical infrastructure.
I think it's totally necessary. I think that it'd be great. Like what I would like to do and see is, like artists are pretty smart, right? Like I think most of the artists that are doing really good work are like really smart people. And I think that they can totally like grasp this stuff. Just after like kind of experiencing it for a little bit. Like I don't think all these artists need their hand held through, marketing and things like that and sales. I think they just kind of like need to see, it's okay to like price your work, right? Like it's okay to have certain things priced, very exclusively, but have them not sell. Like I think a lot of it is just like instilling that confidence that, have some conviction in your own work, right? That's like, that's a big thing.
Yeah, because, I bought my first piece on Super Rare February 12th, 2020. What I was finding is that 90% of the work probably on the site at the time was unsold. But what I was doing was I was just going around and putting like blanket bids on stuff that I liked, right? Because then it kicks it up, they see activity, and people were so excited. I think like a bit of that culture is lost, but a lot of these pieces were 2 years old, a year and a half old. They might have had like 5-6 views. and no bids. And so, again, when things become so market driven and less art driven, then I think a lot of insecurities begin to eat at everybody. I wish we hadn't done like this mass onboarding of artists through kind of like a streets are paved with gold narrative.
Totally.
I don't think that was really in our control. I think that was largely, mainstream media.
I think that like you have to kind of become aware, right, that we're almost in our own echo chamber, right? Like the metaverse is an echo chamber. And you're on Twitter all the time, and artists love to announce sales, right? It's like a huge thing. And I think
the algorithm loves sales, right?
The algorithm loves sales. Yeah. So if you're seeing the most engagement, most popularity on your feed behind, just sold something for 20, 30 ETH, and you're sitting there with 4 101s listed, it's super easy to get into your head. It's just super easy. So I think that, like things like blanket offers on collections are great, right? Just kind of like that little keep going. I personally, I took the route of basically picking a couple smaller artists around Brooklyn that were kind of doing things really early on Bitsky about like a year ago, just over a year ago. And so there's a couple cool artists that I bumped into. Noah Kosher, Noko, is one of them guy. That I just, awesome. So him and I are working really closely on this idea that basically like artists really need like a confidence boost, consistent, self-esteem. And so how do you do that? Monetize, pay them, don't monetize their art, let them do their art, and let the monetization of the art be separate. And Noah's a great example because he's got a ton of great one-of-ones. And
it's funny you mention him because it was a single tweet that I hit him with that got him to make NFTs.
Really?
In the very beginning.
That's awesome.
I forget, stumbled into his work kind of through like the Young Artist Network that was like seeing what Ferocious was doing and kind of following. And I think I saw his work through there. I'm like, man, like you have to mint this. And his stuff is great. I got to meet him at NFT NYC.
He's awesome. I want to do a show with him and this little group of guys next. There's some really cool guys out in Brooklyn. Squibs is another really cool one. Squibs. Max Kolchinsky is doing some cool NFT stuff. He was curating a lot of their work. Actually, that was the first time I saw them all. There was a little show in Brooklyn that when Bitsky had hosted. And I think that like you see like a lot of these platforms kind of turn super commercial. Like you totally see like the commercialization of like the NFTs. And I think that's what adds like this whole, the roads are paved with gold, because if you see, major baseball teams and celebrities coming in and everyone's doing a launch, right? It only makes sense that everyone's going to say, okay, that's where the money is. So
I mean, it was unfortunately like really a marketplace race to the bottom in my mind. Like the Nifty Gateway with the open edition, and then like onboarding celebrities in there, and like Rarible was doing that as well. And then Foundation came along and like hype and adoption, and the people that kind of were like holding the values and ethics of the space were losing.
And that's hard too, because like as an artist, you come to the space and you say, there's 10 marketplaces. Where am I to go? And I think that where they do go ends up deciding the fate of a lot of like artwork. Sadly, like I think, people will come to the space and see, mint your stuff on OpenSea or mint it on Art Contract or whatever, not understanding like the depth behind, having your own manifold or right. And I think that that's something that, those are like the things I'm trying to work on. I think that like onboarding is like is like the name of the game, right? But not just with NFTs, art, with crypto, like all of this, the metaverse, right? It's all onboarding. And I think that no one's really figured out how to onboard, in a broad sense, everyone in a manner that doesn't, push for this whole idea that the roads are paved with gold, but like art in particular, I think it's a lot of like selling this dream that ends up not playing out because of the way that they're selling it, right? They're selling for users on a platform less than, you know, the work, right, on the platform. So
do you collect on other chains?
So not largely, some Tezos stuff, but I don't do it myself. EDG gives me a hand with that because I'm staying off it. I've been staying off it. I think that like if you look at all these chains, it's like, all right, we're gonna have cross-chain, multi-chain world. ETH will be the ETH security layer, right? End of the day. So if you're looking for long-term art and I think some longevity, I think that a lot of artists don't like. I've noticed that the cross-chain stuff, like artists on Tezos. I was just talking to Kim Asendorf, and he's bridging backwards to Tezos actually for his like collectors, just, you know, because he's worried about the cost. He thinks it's like less accessible. So I mean, that's like an interesting thing. I personally, like as a collector, just like to keep shit on ETH. Like it's just because, you know, everything is built for if I'm on Cyber, right, or Gallery or JPEG, I want my shit on ETH. It's simple, right? It's just how the tech works. That's not to say there's not great art. Like I think EDG's got some crazy art on Tezos. Grove is a great series, like Stitch Trauma. But I think that the way he's doing it, the model of bridging and burning on Tezos and bridging to ETH, I think that's a great model. I think like to do work on an accessible chain and then say, you know, you want it on this bigger, you know, chain, this security chain, this ETH, we can bridge it and burn it on Tezos. I think that's a cool model, like a bridging type platform.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very sensitive topic that I generally I don't share much public opinion on, but I am very aligned with everything that you said.
There's great art there. Tezos has some good art.
100%. 100%.
FX Hash, some great art, but just maybe it's less successful for me because my brain's just overloaded to go down. It's, you know, get on Spire and but it's it's
same.
cool and it's there. Yeah.
What about just like what is your collector kind of like tech stack, like Twitter, Discord, Telegram, WhatsApp?
I mean the Twitter trenches, I guess. Discord. Honestly, I think for art, like Twitter is like really great. And I found like some cool artists on like Instagram actually that don't have Twitter. So right now I'm really exploring this artist, or just, you know, chatting with him. I just picked up a table. His name is Pitter Patter. And he does this really cool bootlegs project that's a table. They're at my gallery, and it's basically a table with boots and it looks like pants, like a man wearing pants. It's really funny, but he's minting them, and they've all got these NFTs they 3D scanned, and the whole project is that he'll do a bootlegs table with a QR code, staple it somewhere, screw it in somewhere in the streets of Brooklyn, and you know, someone will find it and someone won't find it, and it's doing pretty cool. I like you know, little funky street art type stuff, but
like more absurdist, more surreal, playful.
But the tech is honestly just I think Twitter is like the tool, the one and all. Discord
and I mean, frankly, it's a shame because I think Twitter also is like, you know, like I helped a friend set up their first Twitter account 3 days ago. And, you know, the recommended follows for NFTs is like Gary Vaynerchuk. And
it's a cesspool, right? It's like, it's an echo chamber at a cesspool. Like, and it's really hard to, I just unfollowed like 2,000 people on Twitter, and the quality, honestly, like thought it would be much more improved. It's not. I think that it's really hard to kind of say, you know, welcome to Twitter, here's who you should follow. But you kind of have to do that in a sense, almost. Like you kind of have to, I think when I'm trying to like onboard people, and it's like crypto Twitter world, whatever, artists, like I think onboarding them to the whole like crypto side of things versus the NFT side of things is way more beneficial, because I think the NFT side of things, like NF Twitter, is super like kind community, right? I think it's all super supportive. I think it's hard to translate it to sales though, because I think it's a lot of, sales. We got sales, it's a lot of like celebrating and, announcing new work. But it's hard to like have to bridge that crypto side of things with the Gary V side of NFTs. Yeah.
I mean, a couple things there. It's like so incredible how sometimes it just takes one sale from the right, person or somebody saying it to just send it like up and through. And that has always been like where I focused, is kind of just like, and who gets me there are the artists a lot of the time. Right?
Yeah.
Like, so having kind of like this built-in mental model and knowing how people are connected and inferring, like who the artists support and respect and want to see do well and succeed. Well, like as a collector, like give them that chance, like help let them come up, because I wouldn't even know where to begin. I don't make digital art. So I have no kind of like basis. I can judge intent and I'm pretty good at judging character. But like, the processes of art, after like the Beeple sale, for example, there was a rush of people doing 3D art. And people are like, oh, this is like a model, or like, oh, this is just like handcrafted. We've seen a million of the same astronaut model, palm tree. Like, it got very kind of like tropey, but
I'm approaching it I think that it's a really cool concept. Like, this is a curational thing, right? And there's a lot of artists in the space that have been around for like 10, 15 years, same as like very, known artists, but aren't also having the same, following community effect on the market. And I'm kind of approaching it by saying that, okay, if I need to curate a show to take this artist to this tier, right, in this community, I should probably present their work along other artists at that tier already. So I like the idea of kind of taking new artists or, up and coming type artists and showing their work alongside someone that's much more, esteemed and has that legacy already. That was kind of the whole idea at the Odyssey show I did, because EDG's been around a long time, just as long as Death Beef, right? They've been doing stuff for ages, 20 years. Godman newer, right? But has that following. So, combined, when you see everyone together, you say, all right, kind of like, holy crap, this is all the same tier. And that's when you kind of start to see, okay, this is the opportunity in the market, market wise. But art wise, you start to understand, okay, there's a lot of similarities between these artists, and maybe you've been sleeping on it.
Yeah. I wanted to go kind of back to something you mentioned earlier. Are there any DAOs that you actively participate in, and how do you feel about like collecting as a group versus collecting as an individual?
I think the effect of collecting as an individual, as like an activist investor in your art, is definitely greater impact. Being part of a DAO, it's your work and your contributions are self-directed. So if you're going to be part of a DAO collecting art, and you're going to take that step to say, I'm a member of this DAO, I'm going to do all this work to, promote you as an artist, that's awesome. And that's sick. Like, why not do it as part of a community? But I personally like it solo. I was doing the DAO thing for a while. Fingerprints is a great group of people, really awesome group of collectors, but not super involved there anymore. And I'm looking at a couple new DAOs, thinking about making some new DAO friends. But right now, just kind of, I think it's easy to focus on like your own art and like the art that you like yourself. And when you're in a DAO, you kind of there's always like influence and opinion, and things will boil down to like curational teams. So you might not always have that say. So I just like the freedom of doing things on your own. And if you can back that conviction with capital, do it solo. Why the hell not, right?
Amen.
But DAOs are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's about the ecosystem. I think, if your passion is emerging artists and helping people get up there, and also kind of back to your points on Bitcoin, like the best way to get interested in something is to buy it.
Best way to build community is to make them very rich, right?
Yeah.
Best way to instill conviction and force patience is to, create wealth somehow. And if you, that's like super, I think one artist that does a great example of that is Jake the Degen.
Yeah.
Awesome work. His editions do really well. And I've got a bunch of friends that picked up early editions, and that was their whole foray. It's like the NFT scene, and they did really well on that. And yeah, that's awesome. I think that like artists that are very like prominent and do those like small little launches to, build out their collector bases. Yeah, really, really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that flew, man. I have to say, I generally hate talking to collectors, but I enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And
Pleasure.
I'll give you any last words, and please let people know where to find you.
No, pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm on Twitter. It's 0xTerence. Other stuff's not out yet, but it will be soon. I'll let everyone know.
Yeah, follow them. All right, cool. Yeah, Colborn Bell, Museum of Crypto Arts, Terence, Collector, Curator. This is Mocha DMINTI podcast, and we'll sign off here.
Breaking news.